Hello everyone and welcome to Adventure Time Top 10. This is a show where I list various top 10 things in Adventure Time. Let's dig right into this. Today we're going to be discussing my top favorite Adventure Time episodes. So without further ado, here's number 10. Escape from the Citadel. Now this episode answered one of the questions I had for the series that was unanswered and couldn't be answered till this point, when they finally showed Finn's father. Now, he was completely different from what I expected, which was really interesting. He was, well, quite frankly, a jerk, and he just seemed like he abandoned Finn and didn't give a second thought to it. So, it intrigued me, and that's why I got to number 10. Furniture and meat. This episode was kind of a funny episode / answers some of my other unanswered questions, like what were they going to do with all their sweet loot they had in their house? Well, they kind of spent it, and it intrigued me. I really wanted to see what they would spend it on. Unfortunately, it wasn't anything cool. It was just an interesting episode. It also delved deep into Jake's psyche and showed how kind of messed up he can get when he has control over people. Something big. This episode was really cool. This was much better than the previous one because the Candy Kingdom was under siege and they had to defend themselves, and it's really cool to see what kind of defense system they had set up. And on top of that, Colonel Candy Corn kind of showed his badass moves. Like, he still had it even though he was really old. It was interesting to see someone that you don't normally see get into action like that. Also, there was this very large behemoth named Saren, who was led by Maja the Sky Witch, who apparently is some sort of notorious witch that we saw in one previous episode. It was interesting to see Finn and Jake conquer this kind of epic task that they had to do. And for the first time, Finn and Jake called in the ancient psychic Tandem War Elephant to fight for them, and that really intrigued me because I've never seen him be in a real battle before. But nonetheless, in the end, Finn and Jake won the day, and all was saved. Death in Bloom. This is one of the episodes that I remember watching many times when I was younger. It had a lot of funny parts in it. Like, it just never ended with the humor. It was so good. And it also showed a new character at the time called Death, which was dark and yet interesting at the same time. It was interesting to me because lots of different TV shows, movies, and video games portray Death differently. And Adventure Time portrayed him in kind of a more relatable, friendly way. They gave him like a cowboy hat and some clothes instead of a dark cloak and a scythe. The reason Finn and Jake were near death was because they went to the underworld to reclaim the spirit of a flower that they killed. Because they were plant sitting for Princess Bubblegum. It showed all the hijinks of stuff that they thought was healthy for the plant, like stuffing it with cookies and stuff. They also took it out of its pot and made its roots go up and down to make it dance to some music. It was just so silly. It was one of my fondest memories of Adventure Time. And at the end of the episode, Finn challenged Death to a musical battle to win the spirit of the plant back. And Finn used a tambourine, and Death used drums, and then he used like a guitar to make an amazing death metal sound. It was just amazing. It was one of my favorite Adventure Time episodes by far. You Made Me is one of my more favorite episodes because it goes deep into Lemongrab's personality and why he is the way he is. And it's interesting and hilarious at the same time. Plus it has one of the funniest moments in all of Adventure Time, in my opinion, where he tries to be kind and coddle a little cookie, and he tries to do it and he just completely freaks out. And then he says, "Put you in my oven!" The first time I saw that, I lost it. It was so funny to me. It still is very funny to me. It's just like one of the most WTF moments in Adventure Time. And near the end of the episode, Princess Bubblegum creates another Lemongrab so he can have some company in his kingdom. And they get along very well, but near the end, I hear one of the best quotes from Lemongrab ever. "A lemon gives by taking and cares by yelling." And that's why this got up to number 6. Holly Jolly Secrets. This episode is, well, for one, the first Christmas special of Adventure Time, so it has a good feeling to it, and throughout the episode it has a nice warm feeling to the episode. It's very relaxing for the most part, and on top of that, it also gets into a bit of the backstory of Simon and how he came to be insane and found the crown and all that stuff, and even like went deeper than that and like went into his personality as to why he captures princesses. It also shows a little bit of history before the Mushroom War. Even though the Ice King was trying to break his way into Finn and Jake's house, in the end they all got over all of that, and Finn and all his friends and Ice King all just acted like a bunch of friends, and is really chill and cool. Dungeon Train. This episode has a lot to do with, yep, you guessed it, dungeons. Now, I love dungeons because I remember having so much fun exploring dungeons in Skyrim and finding where the stuff was and finding all the loot and stuff like that. It was really fun to me, and I had a lot of fond memories of it, and that's partially why I like this episode so much and why it's so high on the list. Speaking of loot, Finn gets a ton of loot, and it makes him look, well, quite frankly, badass. It's really cool and interesting to see which kinds of loot he gets in each car and which enemies he fights next. It's really interesting. It's kind of like the same feeling you get when you play a game like Skyrim and beat the dungeons and discover new enemies and items and things along that line. So in conclusion, this episode got to number 4 because it had a really nostalgic feel to it. Susan Strong. It goes into human evolution and survivors of the Mushroom War. It's very, very interesting, including it has a vault, which is mind-blowingly interesting because you never know what's in a vault, especially considering it's a pre-war vault. Really cool. Finn and Jake discover Susan Strong down there with a group of her other people. It's a really interesting episode, that is for sure. That is why it is so high on this list. Dad's Dungeon. This episode is quite high on this list because I kind of like dungeons, and Dad's Dungeon is more of a traditional dungeon compared to the Dungeon Train episode, and Jake's father made it as a test for Finn to toughen him up, and the whole time he's trying to traverse through there and get to the end and discover what killed his father. And on top of this episode having a dungeon featured in it, it's also one of the funniest episodes by far, so those two in a combination together make this quite a treat to watch. One of the funniest parts in this episode is,
"You gotta call Finn a whiny baby. But butts are for pooping. Do it for Poppy."
So the episode is very well balanced in humor and in exploration and stuff like that. So it's a very good episode, and it also has this sweet little remix at the end of the episode when Finn's beating up this huge monster that killed their father.
Yo, Finn, I'm proud of you. I love you, son. Yo, Finn, I made this message for you. For you. The dungeon for you. This world for you. This message, it's for you. Finn, you're gonna do great. You're gonna do great things. You're gonna do great.
So with all that, you would think this would get to number 1, but it was a close tie between number 1 and number 2, but number 1 was just a little bit better. But without further ado, here's number 1. Simon and Marcy. The reason I like this episode so much has very little to do with humor and more to do with the lore and kind of nostalgia from this episode. I say nostalgia because it brings back a lot of fond memories of my all-time favorite video game, Fallout. I am a huge Fallout fan. I've played over half the games, including like the older ones that were for PC, and I love the post-apocalyptic theme to the game, and it's just amazing to me, and I just loved it to death, and all the exploration and stuff like that. So that ties in quite nicely with this episode because they're exploring the post-apocalyptic world and stuff like that, and they find lots of zombies similar to Fallout. It's very, very interesting. Also, I rather enjoyed this episode because it shows the previously untold story of Simon with Marceline and how they survived after the Mushroom War. It also shows how they had to traverse the post-apocalyptic world, and it shows how Simon slowly started to lose his mind by using the crown to defend themselves. Please keep in mind this is my first top 10. I know it may not be perfect, and I'm not running the most sophisticated program to do a top 10, but nonetheless I hope you enjoyed. And on that, I will end this episode of Adventure Time Top 10. Peace out, guys.